Were you living with your father at your father's place?
Yeah,
at that
I was
time?
living with him until I was 11 years old, and then they divorced. And then by 12, I don't know really where I live. And when I was 17, my father had this apartment and called me for lunch and said, "Listen, I would like to invite you to lunch one day." And I came to his apartment, and I was sitting by the table there and talking to him. It was our first really conversation I had with him in my life that I could remember. And in this conversation, he said to me, almost as a joke, and he said, "Listen, life will end one day. So I have decided to help." All right, and help, I meant commit suicide. So I was 17 years old, and I said to my father, "Hey, listen, you're a grown-up person. You have to choose your own paths." And 3 days later, he committed suicide.
Welcome to another episode of Mind the Shift. This is a podcast where we talk about shifting minds in a shifting world. And my guest today is a person who has made some dramatic shifts in his own world, in his life. And he has probably contributed to a shifting world as well. Daniel Mendoza is an entrepreneur, a writer, communicator, coach, and a father of two.
Yes.
He's based in the city of Västerås in Sweden.
Västerås, yes.
So a warm welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So there are so many ends to begin with in your story here. And I was thinking of beginning with the one end that probably most people, those who do know about you, would probably make a connection to this. And this is also why I got curious in the first place. Being a former journalist as I am, namely your magazine, your positive news magazine, which is called Good News Magazine, and we can just show it to the video audience here, the future YouTube audience. We have a couple of copies here, but it's now not available, I think, on paper. It's only online. So I just want to first ask you, Good News. Why this name, and why this project?
Well, the name was given to me by CFO of one of the largest business in publishing in Sweden, 2005, when I told him the idea that I had to start a magazine to uplift the positive things happening in the world. So he said to me, "Well, you're going to go international with this. It has to be Good News Magazine."
Okay.
I was thinking something else, but he said to me, "No, Daniel, people have to understand, as soon as they look at the cover of the magazine, they have to understand what it stands for, good news."
What was your original title that you were thinking of?
I really don't remember. This was the idea came to me when I was studying at the School of Economics in Stockholm in 1999. And then in 2005, I really started to writing down ideas that I had and how I wanted the magazine to look. So I really don't remember the name, but it was not Good News Magazine. But he gave me the idea and the name.
Yeah.
Why I wanted to do this is because most of my life, especially in childhood, one of the reasons that I say survive is my focus on that tomorrow will be a better day. And try to, wherever I try to survive abuse, for example, in the family, I always look at tomorrow will be a better day. So stay focused. Don't forget that tomorrow will be a better day. And in a young age, I realized that I need to feed myself with positive things, or else I will choose another more dark way. So around, I think when I was 12 years old, I got this fixed idea in my head that I need to feed myself with positive things and try to see good examples in the world, in the community where I was living, in society. So around that age, and then it took me a while to make a magazine out of it.
Yeah, but did you also think, or did you see that other people around you also seemed to have this need to hear about good things, or was it just something within you? Or, I mean, did you talk about these things with other people, and did you get a good positive reaction at first, or did they think that, oh, that's a naive idea, that's just gullible, you can't just talk about good things? What was the reaction?
No, the question in the beginning, it was my journey. It was my way of trying to survive, to heal, and not to have a negative mind and pass. So in the beginning, the first 20 years, I didn't tell nobody that I was trying to live this way.
Yeah.
But I also didn't tell people about my history, my past. Things that happened to me. When I got the idea of a magazine in 1999, it was on my way to Stockholm by train, and I was starting to listen to people and how they communicate, things they say to each other, and what they share with each other. And what I realized was that most of it was about bad things, misery, problems in the world, mistrust. And I realized that this is a dangerous path to walk for us, especially with the problems we have in the world. So in 1999, I was really thinking, no, I need to do something about it, not only for myself, but for others. And most because it helped me. So in 1999, I started thinking, I need to do something. I told my wife, girlfriend then, I told her that, listen, we have to do something because the things I'm hearing every day is dangerous. This is dangerous for society. In the beginning, the first thing was not a magazine. It was, I was thinking, if I can do something 5 seconds each day for a person, something good, make them laugh and make them be happy. So the first thing was a positive magazine, a positive news, a good news. It was more just to make them happy 5 seconds. That's enough.
Yeah.
And if I can do that and somebody else do that for them too, then we have 2 people doing that, and maybe 3 and maybe 4. But then I started to see what people were putting in their minds, in their head, what they were reading, magazine, newspapers in Stockholm. And most of it was bad news. And I said, no, they need something else. They need a balance in their head, in their brain. So I said to my wife, listen, I want to start a magazine with positive news. That was 1999. Then in 2000, I became a stockbroker for one of the Swedish largest bank. And so the idea was lay under the pillow for a while. In 2005, my wife said to me, listen, you're going to be a dad.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't want to be a dad.
That was not good news for you.
No, that was really it was not
At
good
the
news.
time.
Not at all, because one of the things in my life was I never wanted to become a father. I didn't want to have kids at all. Because of my childhood, and I have some similarities to my own father, and I was thinking that if I have if I'm somehow like him in some way, then I will be a dangerous person to have a child around. So I said, no child in my life. But then 2005, you're going to be a father.
You're gonna be a father,
yeah, you're going to be a father. And then I realized, no, all right. So if I'm going to be a father, I don't want to make the same mistakes. And I need to work harder on who I am, who I wanted to be, my values, what I'm going to give to this child. And then I realized, I need to do this for society with a magazine, with positive news. So in 2005 it began, and then in 2010 I left the banking, my work, and started the magazine, Good News Magazine. I had I never done something like that before. I had very little money, no idea, no knowledge, no experience at all. The only thing for me was, we need this in society. Yeah. We need to focus on the positive.
Did you have anyone investing in the project?
No.
Really.
Was my own. Everything was my own.
Yeah.
So.
But during that time, it was still possible to start a magazine and print it on paper.
Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult now. I think it's.
But maybe it is. I don't know. I never look at things. Yeah, difficult, yes, but not impossible.
Not impossible. Nothing is impossible.
Nothing is impossible.
But so you do most things online, of course. These days.
Yeah, but I had a friend of mine was working with magazine, especially in Stockholm, who I met some lunches a couple of times and tried to understand as much as possible about how it is to be a publisher and how it is to put a magazine on the market. And he learned me a few things, but he said to me once, or I asked him in a lunch, I said, hey, listen, his name was also Daniel. I said, listen, Daniel, can you steal this idea from me And he started to laugh, and he said, yes, I can. And he said to me, listen, Daniel, I have the money, I have the experience, I have all the knowledge, I have all the network I need, contacts and everything. So, yes, give me 3-4 weeks, then I can do this.
Okay.
And I was, I felt a little bit, oh, damn, I shouldn't do that.
Yeah,
but then he said to me, but you know why? He said, I will probably one day, if I start this magazine by myself, end up in the TV and Swedish television.
Okay.
And they will ask me the question, why did you do this?
Yeah.
Why did you create this
You
magazine?
need to have a ready answer.
Yeah, and he said to me, the day I get that question, I will fall. But you won't, because this is who you are. This is who you always have been. So for you will always have an answer to why you're doing this.
That's true.
Perfect. Then I met in 2009 producer, magazine Swedish producer, and she said to me, we want to do this with you, this magazine, but we want your story in it from the beginning. And I said, never, because I don't want to talk about me. The magazine is about other people. He said, yes, Daniel, but we have to have you in the magazine because this is your soul. And I said, my soul, how do you mean? And she said to me, well, listen, we are number one in the Nordic country producing magazines, but we are doing products. There is no soul in our products.
Okay.
And this product, you have some soul. She says soul.
Yeah.
And that's something that nobody can take it away from you. That's your competence, what will make you succeed.
Yes, yes.
And I said, well, so
you accepted that? You
yeah, but I
realized that there
didn't put
was
it
a
was
little bit cringeworthy.
Yeah, but I didn't put my story until 2013, I think it was, that I realized that.
In what form was it? Like you there was an article about you and your life history.
Article about me in the magazine, and it was after some people, many said to me, "You're naive. You don't see how the world is, and you don't understand the problems." And I realized in the end that I maybe need to tell people my history to make them understand what I'm doing this.
Yes.
Because I'm not saying to people that we have to be blind for the problems there are in the world. My focus was to be able to solve the problems we have. We need another way, another focus on how we see things.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about the reasons why one should publish more positive news. It's interesting because the time frame that you're talking about actually coincides a little bit with the period when I wrote this book of mine, The Cozy Darkness of the Apocalypse, as we were talking about before the interview here.
I want to read that one.
Yeah, it's not only about the media and the negativity bias, but it has a lot of focus on that.
Yeah.
But it's generally about the human propensity to look for to look for dangers everywhere.
Yeah.
The old lizard brain fooling us, tricking us. So that's the main thing. But it was also around that time, 2008, 2009. I wrote it in 2008, and it was published in 2009. And then I remember when I got back to Dagens Nyheter, where I was working, the newspaper where I was working, not long after I came back, I ran into your magazine, actually. Or maybe some person tipped me because, they said, you were writing about these things, positive news. Look at this good news magazine thing. Just fresh coming out here. So I was intrigued. But I had this, my take on this has always been, because I was always a bit annoyed with my employer when they wanted to have these positive pieces of news as a part of the mix, so to speak, almost as an alibi for telling the true story about the world, which is misery. But then people get depressed, so we need a little bit of positive news. And I was really annoyed with that, because in my worldview, what the media is telling, especially the news media, is not the reality. No. It's just those are the snippets of the reality that they pick out because they are dramatic and they're conflict-ridden, and you can make big headlines out of it. Yeah. You can wake up an editor in the middle of the night and can make in her sleep she can make a headline on something that happens that is bad and rapid, but a slow improvement is completely impossible to make a headline out of. So so I was a little bit skeptical towards why does he do this? I mean, what is this? This is just to I don't know. Is it to tell the story about the world with other words or with another filter, or is it just picking up good stories? So what's your take on this?
No, but for me, it's very simple. And I think there are two ways of looking at something, especially if you're thinking about news and media. One way you can see there are positive things happen, but let's focus on the problems. And the other way you can say there are problems, let's focus on the solutions. I'm not a journalist, but in my way of writing, I said to many of the journalists I work with, when they came back to me, say, "Well, listen, Danny, I always focus on the negative when I'm working as a journalist, and it's difficult for me to drop that because that's in my DNA, or whatever." And I said, "But you don't have to drop it. You can take the beginning of the article you write for me, and you can tell, let's say you're writing about the species, whatever in the world, there is declining and you start by saying, these are the problems. These are the problems this species is facing. This is how close it's become extinct, for example. Write that. Don't lie to our readers. But then, the other half, you say to the reader, now, let us look at the solutions. Let's see where in the world, who has faced the same problems, the same obstacles, and have come with the solutions or have made improvement for a species, for example. So for me, it's just another way of focusing on things. We're still saying the same thing.
Yeah.
There is a problem, and there is danger. But, all right, now we conclude that. So let's look at the other side of this. What can we do? Who is doing it? How are they doing? What can we learn from them? And for me, if the media took a second just to think, all right, but this is really the same thing, just with we turn it around.
Yeah.
And what we say to our reader, when reader today, from as I see it, for example, when a child reads a newspapers, the news leaves them without hope, without inspiration.
I agree.
Yeah. But and this, everybody would agree with this. So what if we could leave every child, every human, with a sense that there is a possibility that we can solve this? We still tell them how big the problem is, how dark it is, but we leave them with the sense that maybe I can contribute to make to this solution. I see that there are people, maybe I can help them with this. Maybe I can tell my friend, hey, listen, this is how dark it is, but these people have this solution in this city, in this country, in this town, this organization is doing it, because that's what the article is telling me, that don't give up.
Yeah.
And if I don't see why media wouldn't take that approach, really, and especially I don't see why journalists don't take that approach, because still telling the same story.
It sounds a little bit, or very much, like the so-called constructive journalism that is growing now. You know about Ulrich Hagerup, the Danish editor who started this Constructive Institute.
Yeah, I know, and I read an article about him in a British newspaper. I think it was The Guardian or the BBC wrote something about it. Long time. This is more than 10 years ago.
10 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's only been doing this for a couple of years, 3-4 years maybe.
Well,
I had him on the podcast actually. So that's kind of interesting, because he's also talking about this approach that you should look for the solutions and be constructive and not destructive, which is to look for the misery all the time. I was looking at the website, Good News Magazine website. It's not on paper now, but it's still on the website, and a lot of the latest stories there were about, like the example that you just mentioned here, the environment and species and things like that. It seems like there's a lot of focus on nature and the environment. Is that correct, or was it just a coincidence that I ran into those stories?
No, it's correct, and it's hard. I'm doing this by myself, and it's hard to find articles to share, for example. They have this focus in the end on the positive. What can we do? When you talk about human rights, for example, if you go into Human Rights Watch or Amnesty, you won't find many positive things, because this organization also lives on contributions. So they need to tell Red Cross, for example, UNICEF, they need to tell the world how bad it is, and it's getting darker and darker and darker. Please give us more help. And of course, so it's hard for me doing this by myself to find articles to translate or to share. And the ones that are of animals' rights, for example,
or like you mentioned the site Mongabay a couple of times, and that's an interesting site because they don't seem to live on contributions from people who want to save the world. I don't know how they make their money actually, but they're actually pretty neutral.
Yeah,
they tell things and large, and they take in articles from different parts of the world, and they have guest writers and all that. So if I mean. If the, for instance, the cutting down of the rainforest is declining, they will write that, and they will have a big headline about that. Yeah. So it's been declining for 5 years, and that's a good thing. So you get it neutrally.
The problem when it comes to good news or positive news is to avoid to be naive. Mm-hmm. And that's
what's naive.
For me, I need the articles to show that the problem, the size of the problem, the magnitude of the problem we have, but also not to. How can I put it in English? Now I wish I wish I hadn't dropped out school. No, but
you're doing excellent.
Yeah, but the thing is that many of the articles that I found when it comes to the environment or human rights, animals' rights, they sometimes lack the bigger picture. Mm. So they see a solution or something positive that is happening, but they don't grasp how is this in the long run? Is this a good thing? Mm-hmm. Or is this something that is happening right now? When I share articles, for example, when we had on Good News Magazine on Facebook, we have over 19,000 followers. I needed to avoid the negative comments. Mm. So I could write something like, well, I know this is just a small step. And that's what's important, just a small step, but it's still a small positive step in the right direction. And we need to highlight it, we need to cherish that. To say to the people that are negative that, hey, listen, I'm not blind. I know there is a problem, but we have to try to embrace this and see this is the right direction we're walking. If we then succeed or not, I don't know, but we are on our way somewhere positive.
But it sounds like, don't get me wrong here, but that you are still somehow buying into the narrative of the world being a terrible place, but we have to find the little positive things. I think it's the other way around. I think the world is mostly a pretty nice place. People are nice to each other. Yeah. People are friendly. Very seldom dangerous things happen in our lives. And then there are some instances and some detailed small places around the world where there are terrible things happening. Yeah. And the media is describing only those. Yeah. Not the 99.99% of the world that's going fine all the time. If you see my point.
Yeah, your
so
point
why
is
should
correct.
why should you be afraid of being called naive and gullible? I think it takes courage to accept that people will call you naive, but you know that you're right and they're wrong.
Yeah, but
because they're stuck in the narrative.
I understand and it's a good question. The thing is that, let's say that I want to, just to give an example to understand how I see this. If I want to work with banks, for example, and I want to have a meeting with people at high levels, I won't come out to them dress in T-shirt with Guns N' Roses on.
Okay, I understand. I see where you're going.
Yeah, so for me, it's important because people want to attack what they're afraid of, what they don't understand. Yeah. They often attack without knowledge. And this is the media today, social media. They hear something, they grab something from somebody, and they throw it out and make that true some way. So what I needed to do from the beginning was to not forget the state of mind of most of the people. And you said a few minutes ago, we are afraid. We have this old way of seeing fear, for example, and things. Yeah. So when I was creating the magazine, I knew that, especially in the media, if I put good news, people will say you're naive, or you're spiritual, or you're religious, or something like that. And if I have long hair and beard and everything, well, then I contribute to the picture they have. So I wasn't.
But that's actually their problem.
Yeah, it is the problem. But if
it's not your problem.
No, but
in a way,
it's not my problem how their state of mind is not my problem. But if I want to reach them with a message, I need to. I give you another example. I employed a man. He was a Nazi, a really a person that hate everybody and everything. I worked with him for 2 years. It took me 2 years to learn to know, to get close to him. 2 years where he insulted me almost every time we met.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And you employed him still?
Yeah. But this is the thing. I knew why he behaved like he did.
Yeah.
I knew there was a reason behind everything.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, this guy needs trust. He needs for me to stand and take everything he throws at me.
Yeah.
Everything he tests me on. And he did. He called me for a lot of things. He was a racist, and I'm from South America, and he hated Latin guys. He said, the first thing he said to me, oh, you're a Latin guy. And then he started to do jokes, racist jokes about Latin guys. So,
but the Nazis fled to South America.
But they did, many of them. Yeah. No, but here's the thing. So, of course, if I wanted to convince him that this is good for you, this is good for your children, that I needed to start by listening to him, by trying to understand him. And I needed to make him feel comfortable about me. I wasn't going to point with my whole hand, say, what you're thinking is wrong, what you're doing is wrong, the way you are is wrong. For me, it wasn't wrong. It was his way of trying to survive in this world. It took him 2 years. After 2 years, one day he came to me and said, listen, Daniel, you know your magazine? I have friends that are more hate. They have more hate in what I have, more on the wrong side of everything. And I'm pretty sure that they will read Good News Magazine and find something good in it.
Oh, that was big.
That was big.
That's a big moment.
Yeah, it was really, and it was incredible. For me, it was an incredible moment. But this is the thing that, of course, we can say it's their problem. But they are part of society.
It's an impressive story. I like it. I like it a lot. And it's really impressive that you did this.
He said to me that he hated me. I said, but you hate everybody. I said, no, listen, I really hate you. You are really hate.
Okay.
He said, yeah, thank you.
Well, my God. Yeah, well, you have a point there. There's good reasoning there, good arguments. But I still think that the media, the traditional mainstream news media, is depicting the world in the wrong way because they are focusing on the negative, and even in these kinds of issues that you probably think are big problems, because most people do. Take, for instance, we've been talking about the environment. There are a lot of side issues within the environment context. We have the climate change, of course, and we have species extinction and things like that. I happen to be fairly knowledgeable about those things. I've read a lot about it, and I've written a lot of articles about it. So I've delved into the matter, and I can see that the ordinary mainstream articles aren't telling the whole truth. And when I say that, I mean that they are telling mostly the bad things of the truth. So there are more to it than just saying that everything's going down the drain, because it isn't that simple. It's a problem, but you can depict the problem in a less problematic way. You can actually, even when it comes to climate change, which is I think most people wouldn't dare to go there because they don't know enough about it. They just decide to trust all the experts that are saying that it's terrible, and all the politicians saying that it's terrible, and they have these examples of this and that. And I can hear sometimes that politicians are wrong. They're actually saying the wrong thing. It isn't like that. I know that they're wrong. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They can get away with saying these things because everyone just takes it for granted that this is how it is. But I can tell you that they're often saying the wrong thing, and you can say it to a person like the former Swedish Minister of Environment or Climate, or a guy like Anders Wijkman or whoever, that you can tell them 100 times that the number of weather extremes isn't increasing, for example. It's even going down, and the number of storms is going down. It doesn't matter. They will still continue saying these things, and people will believe them. So you can depict the world in actually even within the problem framework. You can tell things differently.
Yeah, of course you can. You can always. I mean, that's why I hire a guy who was a narcissist, because my son said to me, "Hey, Dad, if there was such a party, will you vote for them, or will you vote for their enemies?" And I say, I can vote for everybody, because everybody has some part of truth in that I can say, well, I understand you, why you're doing this, or why you're thinking like that. But I don't know why people think that because you're a politician, or because you're a journalist, or because you're whatever you are, that you know how the world really is working.
Exactly.
We have this...
You only have to trust yourself. You have to go to yourself.
You have to trust yourself, but also you have to be a little bit careful that not, if you go to a doctor, oh, he's a doctor, he should know. Or if you go to a police officer, oh, he should know. Or if you listen to a journalist, oh, he writes he should know.
They're just human.
And with a small time to learn what they're talking about. So, of course, and if you want to find in this world experts, or people called experts, that think the opposite to someone else, you will find them. That's not a problem. The problem is, as I see, is this large picture that we think that magazines, newspapers, that we don't understand that there is a business behind this. And like I wrote to you in an email where I met this CFO for one of the largest publishing business in Europe, and he said to me, "Daniel, at my level, we don't give an F about what's written in our magazines. We only look at the numbers."
That's really telling.
Yeah, but I met those people at that level that said the same thing to me, especially when I was working as a stockbroker. And I know that's the truth. They look at the numbers, nothing else. So in that, they forget the responsibility. The problem we have as society is that we forget the person sitting on top. We look at the journalists, and of course the journalists want to write as much as they can, show the truth, dig everything. I know that, but they are not the one making the calls in the end of the day. It's somebody else. And somebody else depends on how are our numbers.
Yeah. Well, I can tell. I've been in there. I've been working as a journalist at a big newspaper for over 20 years. So there's some truth to what you're saying. But of course, when I was one of those, I wouldn't probably accept the notion that I was completely controlled by the top dogs. But there is some truth to it, because I mean there were occasions where I had ideas about what to write, and then I got a very diffuse answer. Well, that's interesting. We'll see what we'll do about that. And then a week after, they said, no, we shouldn't do that. And I could hear that there was something controversial about it, or something that made them.
But you said it no. Right when you say when I was working in it. If you ask a person working at the zoo, let's say that you love animals and you want animals to be free, and you ask somebody working in a zoo, do you agree with me? We should let all animals out. No, because then you say to a journalist, or if you say to a politician, listen, a doctor that tells you to use more drugs, for example, instead of go out and running and eat better food. Because when you're in it, you do what most people do, defend. If you work as a if you work in an army, for example, and someone comes and say to you, hey, listen, shouldn't we stop making weapons? The person will say to you, hey, but these weapons are not for killing people, they are for keeping peace.
Yes. Yeah, I get your point. Yeah, well, I still wouldn't say that I was completely controlled, but I mean, it's easier for me now to talk about these things, that there is something within, it's like we say in Swedish, it's in the walls, it's in the walls. Nobody says it out loud that we shouldn't write about these and these things. And it of course it depends on who is chief editor and boss and all that to some extent. But then the journalists are to some extent also independent, and some take a fight with the bosses, and they get angry.
Yeah, that's
And
part of the
that's
thing.
part of the whole story. So I mean, it's not it's complicated, but there is some truth to what you're saying. Yes, absolutely.
I met a woman, one of the top in Swedish, one of the largest Swedish bank. She worked there for 4 years, head of human resources. And she said to me after 4 years, she dropped out and she ended the work. And I said, why? And she said, hey, Daniel, I don't want to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody told me 4 years ago, don't go there.
Mm-hmm.
You can't change that system. But I thought that, yes, I can. I can change people working in the banking. I can make them understand that there is a human behind the numbers. We have to focus on the human here. And I said to her, yes, that's why I wrote an article about you, because you have this way of thinking and you're working in a bank.
Mm-hmm.
After 4 years, she said to me, I don't want to talk about it because I really thought that I could change.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized these people make me believe that I could change.
Mm-hmm.
But they were not in it for the change.
They weren't willing to do it.
No.
Is she still there? Or
No.
She's out of it.
4 years she dropped out.
So maybe she can talk about it now.
Yeah, maybe. I can give you her name.
Yeah.
Maybe you
because I mean that's a really interesting story. The whole banking system and the money system and all what's going on there. It's also it's you know,
the CFO really I will give you his name later for one of the largest in Sweden.
Yeah, we can take that.
Yeah,
afterwards.
yeah. No, but he said to me that in 2005, he said to me, "Listen, you think that the media can control the bank, or they can write articles about the bank?" Because I said to him, listen, I'm working in a bank. I see things that we do to make money, and it's really annoying because this is breaking the law. And I've seen it how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with 3 different banks in 10 years, but in 2005, 2006, he said to me, Daniel, we know, but they're untouchable.
Okay.
Because we are sitting at the same table somehow.
Yeah. It's the Matrix.
Yeah. No, I don't. I think it's politics and
but it's intertwined also. The media, the government, and the banks and the authorities. It's all intertwined.
Yeah, of course it is.
They're together, so it's very difficult to break it up. To break it, to change it.
And the way to break it up, if you want to break it up, is for me to. Or you do it from the inside, or you just try to live another life.
Yes,
and see. And
if half the population lives a different life, then it will break up automatically.
Or a small group that can be inspiration for others.
Of course, you can only start with yourself.
And that's why when I wrote to you about your podcast, that I said usually I say no to people because my way of seeing the world, my way of understanding life in the world is mine. I do my books, and if people want to buy them and love them, perfect. But my idea, if someone thinks something else, do it, fine.
I can resonate with that.
Yeah.
That sounds really good. Daniel, you've been talking about your life in banking and your books. So now let's back up a little bit here. So you and go back to your childhood really, because you were born in Uruguay.
Yeah.
And your early years were tough, I understand. And also as a young adult, perhaps you made a couple of sharp U-turns there. So tell us about the story. You came to Sweden as refugees.
As refugee, and our plane landed in 1981. It's 40 years this summer.
Yeah.
Do I look Swedish?
Yeah, more or less, I'd say.
No, I was born in 1972, and my parents were poor and working in the countryside in Uruguay. Uruguay is a small country. How much? 3 million inhabitants. Somebody in Mallorca did a joke a few months ago, and he was from Uruguay, and he said to me, "Isn't it strange? There's always been 3 million inhabitants in Uruguay. 20 years ago, yes,
how many?
Yeah,
always 3 million.
Always 3 million. 40 years ago, 3 million.
Yeah.
It feels like 3 million and one, and they kicked him out. If you cannot play soccer, then now
that's why you had to leave.
Yeah,
you were 3 million and
one,
and
no,
4.
The problems in the 70s were probably in the whole South America, Latin America. So my father, where I know he escaped to Paraguay when I was 5-6 years old. I don't know why he did that, but a few months later, my mother one night said, "Hey, listen, kids," we were six kids, said, "Children, pick up your things. And the most necessary, we're leaving. We're taking a bus over to Paraguay this night." Right? We were there for 1.5 years, I think. A lot of problems outside home. And then one night they say, "Hey, we need to leave. By night, we need to go to Brazil." And we ended up in a church in Rio de Janeiro. And I think we were in Brazil for 6 months, something like that.
How old were you then?
8 years old, 8, 9 years old.
Were you older brother?
No, I have 3 older sisters and 4 younger ones. Okay. At the moment, 3 younger ones. So from Brazil, they said, "No, listen, this is South America for you is dangerous. You need to leave. So we're taking you to France," I think it was, because I remember 2 weeks before they started to teaching us French. It was today I can see myself living in France, so it would have been funny. Yeah. But 2 weeks after, they said, "No, listen, you're going to Sweden, north of Europe."
So you were just briefly in France.
Yeah, briefly, and ended up in Sweden with my family. That was how we moved as refugees. My problem was that my family, my parents were extremely violent, and especially my father.
Towards you?
Towards everything. Okay. He had a way of solving problem was with the fist. So for him, violence was almost a solution, and had problems drinking, both of them. So before I was 12 years old, I was abused in most ways you can think of, especially my sisters and my family. This is the first time I talk about this in English that I remember.
Okay.
I think it's by the end of 12,
take your time. Yeah, it's a difficult thing to talk about.
When I was 12 years, I was more or less living by myself, spending nights at friends, or if a sister, an apartment, or wherever I could. My parents divorced when I was 11, and I remember till today that this was one of the best moments in my life, when they said we're gonna divorce. And I know I went outside the house and felt happiness. But really the first time I could feel
What did you think about that? Did you think that everything was going to be solved now?
Because I remember the words I said to myself walking from the house and smiling. I said, "At last, it's over."
Okay.
Until that day, what I felt because of the violence and the abuse and then the mental abuse, I felt insecure, afraid, of course. And this was my first 12 years was kind of violence.
But you were in Sweden then? You were 9 when you came to Sweden?
9.5 when I came to Sweden. But what happened when I was 12 years old, that you say this thing that changed course, was that I ended up one night, I was sitting in somewhere, I don't know, in the same city where I'm living today, and I was sitting alone, and a gang, 5-6 guys came up to me. One of them wanted to fight with me, and I was really I didn't like to. I was not then, not now. I didn't like to fight. I was afraid, but I was more afraid from backing. So I say, let's go. I said to all of them by myself, and I was thinking it's better to face the problem now and to get beaten up and to run, because if I run, I will not only get beaten up later. They will I will make a fool of myself. So I went out with them, and I was standing in front of this guy for, it felt like eternity, but minutes, with my hands behind my back, trying to show them that, listen, I don't want to fight. I really don't want to fight with you. And he started to call me for things and try to embarrass me in front of his friends and everything. And I understand what he was trying to do to upset me. But I said, listen, I know what you're trying to do, but I don't want to fight. 12 years old. And I think he was 1 year older and bigger than me. So it ended up that he threw a punch against me. And then I don't know what happened, but something in my head clicked. It was like another person took over. And it took me It was like a flash in my head, but the thing ended up that I hurt him really bad. I made him almost blind in one eye and punched out some of his teeth and everything. That night, in a way, I came to my father's apartment, rang on the bell, and when he opened the door, he saw that I had blood everywhere in my hands and my clothes.
Yeah.
And he asked me, he said, "Have you been fighting?" I said, "Yes." And he looked at my hands. "Well, did you get beaten up?" I said, "No." And he looked at me again and said, "Good. Wash your hands and go to bed."
That was his reaction.
Yeah, that was his reaction. Yeah. So that night I was lying in the couch and thinking that I'm 12 years old and I have hurt another child for life. And the only thing I hear is, "Good, go wash up and go to bed." And something felt inside of me. There was this voice saying to me, "This is wrong." At the same time, I was thinking, wow, how fast I was, how I took control of this body, this boy. So there was this mix of emotions inside of me. But the voice most heard was this one: "This is wrong.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like this." So 12 years old, I decided, no, I need to be careful with what I put in my head. I need to be careful with what I take in my body. I need to be careful with people I hang out with. I need to try to avoid to again be in a situation like this, because I don't know what will happen next time.
Yeah, because you knew that you had it in you, and it was probably your father acting through you in a way.
I mean, my sons asked me a few months ago, said, "Dad, how many times have you been in a fight?" And I said, "Well, a fight in the streets or whatever." "No, but fighting with another person with punches and for your life." And I said, "Well, maybe 400 or 500 times."
Oh.
And one of them looked at me. "Now we know why you have this reflex, because you're so fast when things coming at you. Even if you're almost 50 years old now." I said, I probably, before I was 20 years old, 400 fights maybe. And somehow this, I was afraid of myself, because I wasn't able to I didn't want to run away from a problem, but I didn't want to fight with nobody. I didn't want to hurt people.
But still you ended up having all these fights.
I ended up, one was girlfriends. I was popular. That was a bad thing. So often, if I were at the disco or somewhere, there was always gangs. It was seldom only one guy. It was 3, 4, or 5. And people come and say, "Hey, Daniel, there's a gang waiting for you outside." I was 14 years old. And I said, "Well, then I will go out and meet them." "But you can't go alone." "Yes, I need to go alone. I need to I do this alone." Because that's what was also in my head, that if I can do this by myself, then I'm making somehow a distance to them. I'm showing them that I'm not afraid of you. And you don't know if I'm carrying a weapon, a knife, or whatever, because I'm standing by myself in front of you 20 guys. So something, but it was something that my father taught me. And it was because when he was angry at me, if he picked up something from the ground to hit me with, he always said, "Hey, shitty head, come here." And I knew that, well, I'm going to get beat up now.
Yeah.
And this was over 3, 4, 5 years old. So I realized really early that the only way to meet a problem for me, it was to confront it, not to run away from it. And in that Good News Magazine, it was the same thing, because the way I was thinking that, hey, let's take the problem, but focus on the solution. So for me, beating up was, all right, take it now. Don't run away from it. See it how it is, and tomorrow you will find, or in a week you will find, but don't run away, because if you run away, in a week it won't be fine, in a month it won't be fine, and your father, next time he's drunk and he remembered that you ran away, then you're gonna get it twice.
But were you living with your father at your father's place?
Yeah, I was living with him until I was 11 years old, and then they divorced. And then by 12, I don't know really where I live. And when I was 17, my father had this apartment and called me for lunch and said, "Listen, I would like to invite you to lunch one day." And I came to his apartment, and I was sitting by the table there and talking to him. It was our first really conversation I had with him in my life that I could remember. And in this conversation, he said to me, almost as a joke, and he said, listen, life will end one day. So I have decided to help. All right, and help a man commit suicide. So I was 17 years old, and I said to my father, hey, listen, you're a grown-up person. You have to choose your own paths. And 3 days later, he committed suicide. And I was somehow lost, but I always win. I had this, I trying to, with the positive thinking, trying to be kind, trying to be good, but every time I ended up in problems. Whatever I did, I ended up in problems. So when I was saying,
you mean you had that mindset already when you were a teenager to see things positively?
Yeah, from 12 years old, the focus. Because, and this is a thing that 1 year ago, a man asked me after a lecture I held, he said to me, hey, listen, Daniel, have you forgiven your father? I said, forgive? Can you explain the word to me? And he looked at me, all right, so I understand. Let me ask you differently. Are you angry with your father? And I started to laugh, and I said, how could I be angry with him? Yeah, because the things he did to you. Yeah, but there was the broken part of him that did those things. I cannot be angry at him. And then he looked at me and he said, listen, I have worked with humans for over 30 years. With people who have addictions, drugs, or people who are abusive, child abuse, people that have raped children. I work with them all. I said, you're the first one in front of me that don't blame the person. That you do. I said, yes, but how could I? Because everyone has his story. My father had his story. I know what went wrong.
That's very wise, because, I mean, as you say, everyone has their reasons for doing things. They don't understand. They don't understand what they're doing, probably.
No, and the problem is this. We judge the person. We should focus on what the person is doing wrong. We can say, this is not right to do. You're doing it wrong. But we cannot blame the person. We have to try to understand what's behind this. Because most of us, like you said earlier, that there is so much good in the world. Well, there is so much good in all of us. Not in the world, in every one of us. But our focus, much thanks to the media, is on the negative. So we don't look deeper into ourselves and others. And I always try to see that there is something deeper. There is a reason my father did what he did. There is a reason my mother, and she was worse than him, did the things she did. I cannot blame them, but the things they did, I will not forgive. But I will not be angry at them. And somehow I found this freedom inside of me. I said to a friend the other day, freedom is nothing someone else gives you, something you give yourself.
Yes, something you have inside. It's a state of mind, more or less.
Yeah, it's a way of being and seeing the world. And I cannot go around and be angry.
Because if you linger on those old grudges and old terrible things that happened to you, old suffering, then you are enslaved by your memories.
Then you keep on suffering.
Then you're not living.
No.
I know you mentioned before here in this pre-interview form that you love to live in the moment, and you think it's important to live in the moment, and I totally agree.
Yeah. I don't see the past.
That's where life is happening.
It's now. I mean, we miss them. I have this. My editor-in-chief, when we had a magazine, we were out. I said to her, listen, close your computer. Let's go. We have a cup of coffee and a biscuit or something. So we went out to a beautiful place outside where we live, and we were sitting in the grass, and I had this coffee and took a piece of the thing I had with me, and she started to laugh really high.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I think, well, what am I doing something wrong? And she said, and I said, well, what's wrong? It's you, Daniel, she said to me. And me, Daniel, I don't know nobody in this world that appreciates so much, so little.
Okay, that's nice.
And I said, you took this bite on this thing you had, and your whole face, your eyes, it was like you were in paradise. And I said to her, well, Anna, her name was Anna. I said, listen, Anna, I could be dead tomorrow. I'm not going to waste today.
That's true.
Think
More people should, I mean, we don't wish for anybody to have that kind of childhood and child abuse that you experienced, but still, because of that, I think you can appreciate the now moment more than many other people, and appreciate to live here and now. And more people, I think, should live both as if they could die tomorrow and as if they have eternal life. And I think both is true, actually.
or as it's a gift today. My son, I was talking to him, having ice cream one day. We were at this coffee in Västerås, and he was talking. He said to me, Dad, sometimes, and don't get this wrong, he said to me, really trying to, he's 11 years old then. He said, don't get me wrong now, Dad, but sometimes I think that things that happened to you, that your father did, for example, really helped you because you haven't gone to jail, and you haven't done this and that, and you haven't never used drugs, for example. So I think that it helped you. And I said to him, no, it's not often I say to my children, you're wrong. But I said to him, no, you're wrong. You know what helped me? It was not what they did to me that helped me. It's the way I choose to see things.
Yeah.
So it's not them, it's me.
Yeah.
It's my choice.
It's your choice. And for some reason you have that strength within you. And where it comes from, we can. That's another podcast.
No, but where it comes from, one of the things is, and this is important to mention, Gunjes magazine, because I didn't have anything really, and what I learned from the beginning was violence, abuse, in all kind of form. So, what helped me was to see there is kindness in the world, not to talk about it. The people say, but you have to trust people, they are good people. I start to look at people, how they behave. If I was in a grocery store, at school, or whatever, that I saw people being kind to each other. And for every example that I saw with someone being kind to another person, especially a stranger, it was something that I took that experience and put it on my suitcase, whatever you call it, because something in me said, that is good. That is something right. They're laughing, they're hugging each other, they're being kind to each other, they're helping each other. I need to learn that.
Yeah.
So Gunjes magazine was, in a way, the same thing, trying to show other people that yes, there are problems in the world, and yes, there are people that misbehave, and yes, there are politics that are doing wrong, but don't get blind. Because if that's all that you focus on, you will get blind. And
what you focus on is what you will experience, of course.
And what you become.
What you become.
So for me, what's really important I know there was, I was throwing, when I was 11, 12 years, I was throwing small pieces of rock trying to scare birds. And I'm an older man, he maybe was at my age then. He saw that and he said, hey, kid, stop doing that. And I got afraid, of course. But I was lucky enough that something in my head said, he's right. I should stop doing this. And that was the last time I tried to even hurt an animal.
Yeah, I've done those things too. When I was young, I was maybe 6 or 7 or so, because the curious scientific mind that many small children have makes you sometimes make like little frogs suffer. Step on them, and you want to see what happens. And I remember one time when I was doing this, and one frog was smashed under my foot, and a stone that I had put on it. And I was doing this together with a friend, and I felt shame. I remember that the feeling of, this is wrong, like you say, this is wrong. I can't do this. What am I doing? So I never did that again. But anyway, talking about strangers, I think you mentioned a stranger, meeting a stranger. You did meet a stranger at the age of 24, and you had an aha moment. You told me. What was that? It changed your life?
It changed my life, and it's still not changing my life, but helping me still changing my life. I'm 23, 24 years old. I was home. I was visiting my mother, but she wasn't at home then. So I was there with my girlfriend, my sister, only one of my sisters, only 3 of us there. It was a rainy day, really, really rainy day. And I was sitting in the kitchen looking outside. I had this at that time really dark thoughts about why do I exist? Should I continue to exist? And I'm a non-believer, or was a non-believer, but I was thinking in my head, if there is a God, please show me a sign. Put the apple tree outside on fire, whatever, those kind of things. And I'm looking outside in the rain and hoping that something starts to burn or whatever.
Yeah.
I needed that sign to survive.
Bush.
And then the doorbell rang.
Yeah.
And I flew up and I went and opened it. You know, in those times when somebody rang on, you went to the door and see who it was.
Yeah.
Not like today. Have you invited something?
Yeah.
So I went to the open the door, and there was this guy standing outside who almost looked like I did. The same hair, and it was incredible how similar we were. And he had under his arm 10 small paints that he was selling. We spoke only English, so I and it was raining. Yeah. So I said, "Please come in."
Yeah.
And I gave him a towel and asked him, "Do you want a cup of tea or something?"
Yeah.
But at the same time, especially in those times, I was extremely skeptical to people. I didn't trust nobody. And when I read things, I tried to learn a lot of things. I did it to be, to be on a positive side of everything. So if someone said, I'm a believer, I said, nah, why? Yeah, because, now why? But why? Yeah. And I didn't buy anything.
To question everything.
I questioned everything totally. So there is this guy sitting in a living room, and the first thing he says to me is, I ask him, "Who are you?" in English. He only spoke English. He said, "Well, I live with my brothers and sisters. We are a community. We try to care about the world." And as soon as he said that, something in me started to think that, all right, I need to see how real this guy is. Yeah. So I started to ask really difficult questions and really private questions to him. But the thing is, one of the questions was, are you for or against violence? And I remember the answer said, I'm for self-defense, he said to me. I think it's wrong with violence, but I think it's in every creature's right to be able to defend his life or the ones he's supposed to protect. The thing with this guy was, it was his eyes. The more he spoke, the more I started to think that I'm sitting in front of the most beautiful person I have ever met in my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
so his eyes were like shining?
Shining. Yeah. The only thing I told this for a friend a long time ago, but explain their eyes. And I said, do you see Pavarotti standing on singing something? Yeah. And his eyes were almost shining. Yeah. And it was something like that. And the more he spoke to me, the more he told me things, the more I understood. I didn't have any defense. And in the end, I was just listening to him. So anyway, I bought all the paint that they had, 10 paint, perfect seller. And he gave me his phone number. It was I was living in Västerås. The phone number was to a place in Stockholm. I kept this number for 2-3 weeks, and in the end I realized, no, I want to speak to him again. I called this number, but there was this classic it means that nobody, the number didn't exist. I had the paintings, and I asked my girlfriend, my sister, hey, listen, this guy, you really met him, right? He was there. And they, yeah. And he was beautiful, right? Yeah, he was beautiful, but kind of, yeah. And I started thinking, I want to be like him.
But that was the sign that you were asking for that day. That was the sign.
Yeah, there was the sign.
It never comes in the form that you expect.
No. But
afterwards you can realize that, maybe that was
the sign. And the thing is that from that day to today, every person I meet that says to me, I believe, I am this and that, I like to see in their eyes that you're telling the truth. This is you. Yes, no, you're lying. This is not you. I have met priests, different kind of religious people, And there's something about how they speak and how they act and react to things that I compare to him.
Mm.
And so for me, it's always been, he gave me this, Daniel, try to be you.
Yeah.
Try to be you.
That's
whatever,
good advice.
and try to be kind. And realize that kindness, if we say, I want to be kind, people say, oh, but being kind is naive. No, being kind is also having to say to people, step back.
Mm.
So there you have it.
Yeah, beautiful story, and I can understand why it changed your life. You say that it changed your life because it's seems like kind of a sign or something that was meant to arrive in your life at that
second,
that moment.
So it
in
wasn't
time.
a tree that started to burn.
No,
but it would have been good.
Been good with the burning bush.
No, but the thing is this: I didn't. If they, I say, God, if you exist, please give me a sign.
Yeah.
But what the sign I got was that in us, in humanity, there is so much kindness.
Yeah.
And I need to focus more on that.
That was the message that you were supposed to receive, and so you can, because you had it in you.
Yeah, I had it in me, but I was losing it.
You were losing it, okay. But then after that, you have always cultivated this notion that kindness and love is the only thing that makes the world tick, no?
It's the only thing that makes you feel better in the end, because I think, especially, like I wrote you that foremost publish or whatever I do, a coach, I'm a father. That's the most important thing. And for me, being a father is not telling my kids how to behave and not behave. It's showing them.
Yes.
And the best way is not how I behave only with others. How do I behave with them?
Yeah.
How do I listen to them? How do I express myself to them? How do I things they say to me, or do I get upset? How do I react to? Do I do it with love or with the broken pieces of me?
How do you define love, if you have a definition? Because love can be, it's different things for different people, maybe.
Yeah, I think nobody really knows what love is, but this is...
In your world, what do you most work with when you talk about love?
I will say that for me, love is, in one word, kindness. Kindness in all the possible way that you can be kindness, even if you have to say goodbye to somebody because you two don't get along together, there is kindness in that. If you have to say to your child, stop doing that because that will have consequence, there is a line you cannot pass, and this is the line. That's being kindness. So for me, love is to try to be this creature in this world that in every possible decision you take, in every step you take, you don't forget that I'm trying to do my best to be kind and to live sincerely.
And then there's this big love that some call the unconditional love, that people who have had near-death experiences and things like that, they talk about this complete love that we cannot even understand here on earth. And of course it's difficult for us who haven't been close to death but I was thinking of when you sat down with your colleague there and you took a cup of coffee and you took a bite of that cake and you just felt the moment. You felt that was kind of love, also love for life, so to speak. You were just loving the moment, and that's also love.
Yeah, of course it is love. The problem with the word love is that nobody really knows, so we try to explain something that is a little bit abstract. We use different words. And some people confuse a relationship, for example, or being affected by somebody. But a good feeling.
It's a difficult word because it should have more layers to it.
Yeah,
you should be able to define exactly what kind of love are you talking about now. Because
and we don't. It's like the same thing about being good or being kind or love. We have
interpreted.
Yes, somehow the words. If you say, I want to be kind,
Yeah.
people say, "Oh, then you're naive." I said, "No, why?
No, that's
How
not-
can kindness be something wrong?
Mm.
Kindness is all what you don't understand." I said to some people is what's in kindness, because drawing a line, for example, and say to people, "You cannot go further," can be kindness. Is saying to people, "This is who I am. This is why I can take and not take. So if we're gonna work together or collaborate or live together, then you have to know who I am." And
it's an act of caring anyway. If you set
because there is
set up a red line, then you care for that person because you know that they can go beyond it. Something bad
but it's
would happen.
interesting word.
It's an interesting word. So we have been talking for a long time, but I just have to also get into the writing that you're doing. We're talking about love here, and you also write books now. I think since
About
2000.
love.
Yeah, are they about love or?
They're about that. Yes,
3 books now, or
3 books, and 5. 2 books are about.
So what
poems.
kind of love is that then?
Unconditional love. Like
okay,
you said.
okay. Unconditional.
So no,
love,
the thing is, when I created Good News magazine, after a few years, I realized that I was talking a lot to the brain, showing statistics, stories, and present to the world the energy, the environment, animal, human rights. But I realized that I want to go deeper. So in 2013, I think it was, I started to create this. I had a meeting with a person in Malmö, Sweden, who somehow had the same story that I had, but she was a woman. And in talking to her and the emotions between us, I started to think that I should write a story, fairy tale or something, where I put my values in the characters of the book, and where I put how I see life, how I see love, how I think we should act as individuals in society, but make it a love story.
Okay.
So I wrote, my first novel was The One, and I thought that nobody will buy this book. In the beginning, I didn't even want to print it. I said, no, I'm doing this for myself. I need to do this. And then my sons and my wife say, well, you have to print 3 because we want a couple each. And then I started thinking, no, go write 3. And then one of the sons said, hey, listen, Dad, you have to do some more print than this. Okay. So I did 800 copies, and I thought for myself.
You paid for that by yourself?
Everything by myself. Everything by myself.
Okay.
So I started thinking, all right, 800, but nobody will buy this. Who wants to buy a book from me? I don't even know how to write. There was the idea. It took me less than 3 months to sell. So I sold out this book, and I realized, all right, I need 4,000 copies. I sold them out to, I need 3,000 more. And that was the story. I think I saw around.
But there was no official publishing house.
No. I don't know.
You didn't even send the script to them?
No, nobody.
Okay, you did this by yourself.
I don't know how to do those things. No, but really, I don't know how to.
I think that's impressive.
Yeah, I really don't.
I've published 1 book by myself like that, self-publishing, but the 2 others that I've written.
Yeah, but there is this, this Garfield, the cat, his friend, the dog. Mm-hmm. There is a quote I love.
What's the name of the dog?
In Swedish, Oddi.
Oddi, yeah.
I don't know Oddi. In English,
it's the same in English. Oddi.
But the thing is, Oddi, he's sitting up in a tree, and Garfield is standing behind him. And this dog isn't supposed to be up on the tree.
No.
So Garfield says, it's amazing what one can do when he doesn't know what he's doing. And that is me.
Yeah.
That is with the magazine, with my books. I have no clue. I met a person a few weeks ago that wants to help me, and he said to me, have you thought about this? And you can be there, and you can put your book in those stores, and you can send them to those journalists and everything. Yeah. I said, can you do that
for me, please?
For me, how much doesn't it cost? 500,000 crowns.
I think maybe that's the secret. You're a person who can explain why these things work, because the secret is not to expect anything.
Yeah.
Have no expectation of the outcome. I think that's the secret of
But it don't
how to
work.
achieve things. But I mean, it's tricky because you want to achieve things, you want to do things, but you can't focus too much on the outcome and the honor and all those things, because then you're gonna put up obstacles for yourself, I think, in your mind.
Yeah, but the problem is this: what is, for example, making it work? If people ask me, oh, but you were successful with the magazine, we had around 200,000 readers, more than 10,000 paying subscribers, and I said, no, I was never successful with the magazine. In when it comes to the business in it, with my books, it's the same thing, but there is this other side of everything, and is how do you affect people?
Yeah.
I had a child, 11 years old. They came to me. I was doing a lecture at school, and one of the teachers, I think it was, or the principal at school, came to me after my lecture and said, listen, Daniel, we need to talk. So we went into her room, and she said, there is this child who wants to talk to you. All right. So I was sitting there, and somebody knocked on the door, and she said, oh, come in. And there was this child, 11 years old boy. The first step he took into our room, I could see in all his face, energy, whatever you want to call it, what was going on in his life, because I saw myself as a child.
Okay.
So he sat in a chair beside me, and he said, the principal said, you wanted to talk to Daniel about something. And he said, yes, but it's so difficult. It's so difficult. I don't know how to talk. And almost start to cry. And I said to him, in me, my voice was yelling out, listen, you know what this is about, Daniel. You know what this is about. So he almost started to cry. And I said to him, listen, can I help you? What I can do, if I ask you questions, you just say yes or no. And I was going to give him my first question when he started to cry, and then he yelled right out, and he said, I have the last 3 months trying to find a way to commit suicide. But I'm so afraid that my parents would be angry with me. 11 years
that's
old.
really sad.
Yes. The problem with this is, when I asked him why, because the principal left the room and said, talk to Daniel. And I said to him, why? And you helped me to understand why. And he said this, it's because I don't think that you grown-ups care about the world.
Oh.
And why he feels and thinks like this is because everything that the grown-up gives him is the bad thing.
Yeah.
There is no hope.
Yeah.
There is no future.
Yeah.
So this 11-year-old boy that has this whole future in front of him wants to commit suicide because the grown-ups in society are saying to him, the world is so bad.
It's a crime that we do these things to
It is
kids.
a crime. It is a crime. And then we complain about the problems.
About the problems
Yeah.
and about the young generation who are so,
But we don't see so...
depressed. And,
no, so for me, I'm like that little dog. I don't know what I'm doing.
But you're doing it.
Yeah, but I do it because...
That's the main...
But there is a good thing in that too, because if somebody said to me, oh, you failed. I say, yeah, but at least I try.
Exactly.
At least
That's
I
the spirit. Daniel Mendoza.
Yes.
Thank you.
Monsieur Anders.
Thank you for spreading the good vibes.
I tried to. Thank you.
And good
Thank
luck.
you for having me. Maybe I will do this again someday.
Absolutely.
In France.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.